we're going to get into the weeds here first. Let's just jump in with both feet and talk about the Shohei Ohtani thing, because it's a whole thing and it needs to be talked about. Okay.
It does.
Brad and I, baseball family, we were going to jump in and start adding to the noise that was going on around the story, but we decided not to. And by we, I mean Brad. Brad said, let's wait and let's see what develops.
Well,
And
just
we're
because
glad.
my thing was that we didn't know anything, right? At that point, it was all
Exactly.
speculation and jokes. People saying like, "Oh, new Pete Rose," da 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 da.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, "Oh, Otani's going to speak. He's going to give us Sweet 16 picks." Like, and I'm sorry, but I don't think it's very funny because it's a pretty serious thing that the face of baseball very well could have just as easily come out today and been like, "I bet on baseball. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, shouldn't have done it."
What are you going to do?
Like to me that's a big deal. And I thought about it, Brig. I was like, if Otani bet on baseball, who else is betting on baseball?
Right.
And at what point do we just say can't do it anymore?
Yeah. Right.
You know, it's kind of having an
Yeah.
existential crisis today with Otani, Brig.
No, I was too. And I've been explaining it to some people, not the situation, some people, the situation, but I've been explaining the emotional weight of this to people from my perspective since it started. And honestly, I'm still up in arms about it because, I have a soft spot for Pete Rose and his situation. I just do. You brought that up. I think it's worth bringing up in the conversation. It's also very interesting that here very soon we will be talking about Pete Rose. So if you are watching, this is a tease right here. And if you want to see the cover reveal, it's on Instagram. All right. Seriously, though, Pete Rose has been on our mind for a number of reasons, not least of which this wonderful book that we're reading. But with the Shohei Ohtani allegations, it's how do you not have the conversation when, I mean, here we are with two guys that are just incredible baseball players. If we're going to draw parallels, right?
Yeah.
You can't help but bring them up into the same conversation. So
Right.
it's been
No, I
hard.
know.
It's
Well,
really
especially
hard.
with that much money that was involved. So, do you mind if we just get into it, talk about the timeline, and then we can make the
No, I think we need
comparisons?
to. Yeah,
Okay.
we need to. Well, you do one and
So,
then I'll do one.
all right. Okay. So, this all came out after game one. If those of you who maybe have not been paying attention and not been following very closely, after game one in Korea, apparently there was, I don't want to say it's like a team of reporters, but it was almost like HR was waiting in the clubhouse for Ipe
Yeah.
Mizuhara. I put the pronunciation there for myself, Brig.
Yeah,
Ipe
Mizuhara.
Mizuhara, they were waiting for him in the clubhouse to fire him because he had been involved with illegal gambling.
Yep.
And so,
To the tune of
show
$4.5 million.
in debt. Yeah, I was reading something
Exactly.
today. He said that he's like, I never won. He's like, I just kept betting bigger and bigger, trying to get ahead, which I understand. Like that is definitely a thing that you chase and chase and chase if you're on a cold
Yeah.
streak, and then finally you're just like, I got hit at some point, can't just miss. And so I understand
Yeah.
it because I've had like a week like that, right?
Right. Right. Yeah,
and who hasn't? Who gambles? So
for
the
sure.
difference is I'm betting with lunch money, and he's apparently betting with starting with hundreds of or thousands of dollars, going up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, up into millions of dollars, right?
Apparently so.
So because it was $4.5 million in debt to an illegal bookie. At first, the news said that Otani gave him $4.5 million to pay off his gambling debts, but then not long after that, the story changed. And
Yeah.
it turned out, and they were saying that Mizuhara had stolen the money from Otani to pay off his gambling debts. And I can see, like, when that happens, why people are like, well, no, hold on now, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah.
why are you changing your story? And the
Yeah.
reason that the story would change on Otani's behalf is because there is such thing as wire fraud. The Wire Act
For sure.
specifically prevents is a law that makes it so that you cannot transfer money for
Hmm.
illegal gambling.
You're
That's
right.
2
Exactly.
years in federal prison for every wire, every wire transaction. So if there were $500,000 transactions to the tune of 4.5 million, Brig, real quick, what's that? 9 transactions 18 years in prison for Shohei Ohtani?
That's bad.
That would be really, really bad, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would make sense why suddenly somebody's like, oh, but no, it was stolen, right? And I could see why people would be skeptical with that,
Yeah.
right? Because that was my first thought. I was like, oof, that's ugly.
It's a
That's
bad
really, really ugly.
it's been a bad look from the drop, right?
Mm-hmm.
From immediately, can I say it that way? From
You sure can.
immediately, Brad. It's
Yeah.
been it's been
From the
bad.
immediate.
Yes. So all of this information sort of dropped in a media scoop, I guess you could call it, because ESPN did a 90-minute interview with Mizuhara about his involvement with an illegal bookmaker in Southern California, who is also, by the way, under federal investigation for said activity.
And by the way, real quick, how is this dude not in handcuffs like yesterday after all
Yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah. Right.
Because they know
Why
who
is
he
his
is.
name quiet?
They know who he is.
Yeah.
They have his name. It's been in these articles. And they have the evidence that I'm assuming they would need. So like, why is this dude still out on the street? And they're like, well, we just don't have quite the evidence that we need.
Come on, man.
If you have the evidence you need to just about destroy somebody's career and another man's life, how do you not have the evidence to take down a bookie?
Yeah.
That's what I want to
Who's
know.
running multiple books with multiple clients?
Yes.
You don't become an illegal bookie with just one guy
Right,
coming to
exactly.
you.
So there's more to this. So Otani's name was attached to the wire transfers, and that's kind of how he got involved here because
Of course.
ESPN was doing is it investigative reporting. They're looking into this. They found that Otani's name was attached to these wires, and that's why they went back to Mizuhara. The bookie noticed that his name was attached, but decided not to ask questions because he was getting paid.
For sure.
And so this is how this works. Is people have been saying, like, why on earth would you go to an illegal bookie? First off, sports betting in California is not legal. Okay.
Right.
So there's that. But also, for anybody who has wondered that in a state where it is legal, like say New York,
Hmm.
right? Why would you go to an illegal bookie if you can just use FanDuel or DraftKings? It's because you cannot gamble on credit on a gambling app. A bookie
Right.
will let you gamble on credit as long as he thinks you're good for it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I could see the conversation being like the bookie being like, hey, Ipe, how are you going to pay for this? And he knows that he's Shohei Otani's translator, right? And he's like, all he has to do is say, hey, Shohei's got my back.
Yeah.
Bookie takes his word for it. That's all
Good to
there
go.
is to it.
Yeah.
He doesn't ask any more questions, being like, well, hold on, he's a big leaguer. This is illegal for him to do this. That's going to be
No
wire
way, man.
fraud, blah, blah, blah. He's not concerned about that. He's just worried
No.
about getting his money, right?
That's it. That's his whole job. Honestly, it's his whole
So
thing.
it is his whole dang thing. And that's why that to me is how Mizuhara could have easily racked up $4.5 million in debt,
Yeah.
gotten tied up in this entire thing, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But I believe Otani when he says he didn't know. Well, and
We
I'll
will
get to
get
that
to
more
that.
in a little bit.
So Mizuhara was fired by the Dodgers right before the team left the clubhouse after game 1. This is in Seoul. And then over the weekend, more news kept coming out, which painted Mizuhara as a liar, that he never attended UC Riverside, which was on his resume. He never worked for the Yankees or the Red Sox.
Which
And
were
now
also
we're
on his
wondering,
resume.
yeah, and now the question becomes, who is in charge of hiring him for the Angels, and why are they not being held at some level of accountability for failing to do a certain amount of due diligence in their hiring process? Is this just Artie Moreno being cheap again? Is that what this
Not
is?
running a $50 background check or however much it costs to run a
Yeah,
5-minute background
exactly.
check. Yeah, I don't know. I
Exactly.
don't know what it was. If they were just like, yeah, just get him somebody. He speaks
Or
Japanese
did
and
he
English.
come over?
Okay.
Because he didn't come over with him from Japan. This is somebody he was put with when he got to the Angels.
As far as my understanding, yeah,
That's my
they were
understanding too.
basically assigned together when he got with the Angels. So
Yeah.
that to
Yeah.
me is like it almost feels like Super Angels though, right? Doesn't it?
Yeah,
That
it
like they
really
would
did.
miss something super crucial like that
Yeah.
and then end up having some because all the weird stupid things that have gone on and unfortunate things that have gone on
And yeah, I was going to say,
over the
and really
last
sad.
decade or so because of a lack of
Yeah.
administrative control in that organization.
Yep.
This
That's
is just
exactly
another
right.
one.
It is. And they're not small. None of them have
No,
been small.
no, none of them. It's bonkers. It really is.
Yeah,
I
bonkers.
don't understand it.
If
But
you're
anyway,
in the
so
owner's group
oh,
and in the commissioner's office, how are you not looking at Artie Moreno by now going, excuse me, sir? Like, you
I would
are
be.
soiling the brand, and the entire league is now suffering in the court of public opinion because of your repeat mistakes.
Yes. Yeah, either hire some people who can figure it out or figure it out yourself or something because
Get out.
things are not going well in Anaheim. But
So
anyway,
let's
so we
fast
fast
forward
forward
to
to
Monday
Monday.
afternoon, right?
Mhm.
Ohtani held a press conference with no questions. He said there would be no questions. He read a statement, and in that statement, he said, I never bet on baseball or any other sports. I never have asked anybody to do that on my behalf. I never went through a bookmaker to bet on sports. And moreover, he said, um, what does it say here? Just to go over,
Yeah, so it's a little clunky because
it's
he was
clunky because
speaking
of the
Japanese
translation.
and then the translation, yeah. So he says, "Just to
You
go
know, I
over the
will say,
result." Oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. Okay,
Oh,
really quick.
yeah,
Let's forgive the translator a little bit. I've done translation work. It's super hard, and the difference between translation and interpretation are two wildly different things.
right.
And they brought in a guy who was he was trying to translate, but he ended up doing some interpretation in the meantime, and he looked like he was struggling a little bit, and rightly so. It's not an easy thing to do. So let's cut this guy a little bit of slack. If it sounded like Ohtani spit out a lot more words than the translator conveyed, that's probably because that's exactly what happened. Okay.
Well, so you
It's not
watch the guy,
easy.
he's, like, writing down what Otani's saying as he's saying it,
Yeah.
right? And then he's probably looking at like, reading what he said and then yeah,
It's hard.
and then
Give
interpreting,
him
yeah,
some grace, people.
I can't imagine, man. So then he says, just to go over the result, in conclusion, Ipe has been stealing money from my account and has told lies. He also said, last weekend in Korea, media reached out inquiring about my potential involvement in sports betting. Ipe never revealed to me that there was this media inquiry. Okay. Now that's fine, like, and
Right.
then he also said that he had no idea this was going on. But the big question people keep asking though, because Ipe Mizuhara had been transferring money from Shohei Ohtani's account to the bookie. Now, the big question
Right.
everybody has is like, how did Mizuhara have access to Ohtani's accounts?
Brad has an answer.
I think that's super duper easy.
Yeah.
So they've talked about how those two spend a ton of time together,
They're
right?
besties.
Together all the time.
Yeah.
Brig, if I'm at your house and I need you to get something on my phone, I'm gonna say, hey, 1 2 3 4, that's my passcode.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead
Yeah.
and get in there, right?
Right.
So
Same.
because I trust you.
Yeah.
Now,
Thank you.
you have access to my text messages, my credit
Hmm.
cards, my bank
Hmm.
account, and if you can't get into the banking app, you know where to go to get that password,
For sure.
right?
Yep.
So if he's trusting Mizuhara with so much, with everything from communicating to negotiating to everything in between in his life, and they're spending so much time together that Mizuhara at one point said that he spends more time with Shohei Ohtani than he does with his wife. These guys trust each other.
Yeah.
Ohtani trusts him to get into his phone and not do anything with it. Mizuhara, somebody who has a gambling problem, an addiction,
An addiction. Yeah.
is in desperate times, has a best friend who has money.
Yep.
Wouldn't put it past somebody to steal money from somebody if they're in debt like that.
No. No, I
That
wouldn't
is
put it past them either.
super easy. Even if he doesn't do it on his phone, he could take all that information off his phone, log in, password, go get on his bank. He has his phone there, two-factor authentication, get into his bank
Easy.
account, wire transfer money whenever he wants to. No
Yeah.
problem. He could
Yeah.
do it while Shohei's in the bathroom.
For sure.
Like, to me, that's not even a thing. Like, not even a question. Like, how did he have access? Easy. They trust each other.
Right.
That's all it
Okay,
comes down
now I'm going to jump in and play devil's advocate here.
to.
Okay.
Okay, do it.
And I'm going to say that First of all, let me just make this super clear. I don't think Shohei Ohtani is guilty of anything. I
Okay.
really don't. That is not what I'm going to, that's not the picture I'm going to paint here. What I am going to say is, in the event that any evidence came out that implicated Shohei Ohtani, Major League Baseball would do anything to cover it up.
Oh, yeah, given
I,
the evidence that we have reading Bloodsport with Rob Manfred and his inability to conduct an investigation, yes.
yes, he not only will they do everything they can to cover it up, baseball does not need this scandal. It's in fact the very last thing baseball needs. Everybody from Rob Manfred to the kid digging Cheerios out of the couch cushions during the seventh inning. Everybody in between knows this is the worst thing that could ever happen to baseball if Shohei Ohtani is found guilty of gambling on baseball. It's the worst
I could
possible
see,
scenario.
even if it was like Mookie Betts, them being like, they found anything like, yep, he's banned,
You're done.
right?
It's over.
That he was
But
betting on
because
baseball.
it's Shohei Ohtani, it doesn't matter what they find. If they find anything, if they look, okay? That's the thing, is if they even lift a finger to try and figure this out, whether it's to corroborate storylines and evidence, whether it's to seek to exonerate anybody, let's say they're casually indifferent at best, and then they sweep it under the rug. I don't know. I would not put it past the people in charge to say, shut up, this never happened. Now, here's the only other thing I can think of on the flip side of that is that if the evidence is so just unavoidable, it's astronomically apparent that Ohtani perhaps bet on baseball. Let's now super hypothetical here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens is Rob Manfred it's going to force his hand, and he has to come down so hard because he has to make up for what happened in the Astro scandal and for
Yeah.
not punishing any players. So if I'm Rob Manfred, I'm bent over both barrels at the same time in this situation. That dude is in the worst possible scenario that probably any commissioner of baseball has ever been in this situation.
Just about. Yeah. The one thing I will say is that, so like I said before, my initial thought was wire fraud, right? And then as I was looking more into it, because Mizuhara said he never bet on baseball, and the bookie said he
Right.
never placed any bets on baseball, right? So
Right.
they both have that going for them, that there's not
Yeah.
going to be a lifetime ban, but there is the involvement with an illegal sports book, which is against the rules, and that's just a big old fatty fat fine. Because there's something that I think it was Cozart a couple years ago. Can't remember
Yeah.
his first name, like Jacob Cozart or something like that. He was betting in an illegal sports book, and they just fined him an undisclosed amount, and
Yeah.
all is
Right.
well, right?
Yeah.
And so I think they have enough evidence to support that there's no, that he's not going to get anything that comes out. He's not going to get a lifetime ban from baseball, but there is going to be a federal investigation, because that's a whole lot of money to be stealing. And that
Yep.
is a whole lot of money involved in the illegal sports book. So there is a federal investigation that's going to be ongoing, and I don't see how, if there is some kind of illegal involvement, I don't see any way of him getting out of it. That if he did transfer that money to cover those bets, he's going to do federal time.
Yeah.
He's going to do time for wire fraud. That's the way
Yeah.
that's it's going to happen. That $700 million is not going to buy him a get out of jail free card. I don't feel like, because
No, it's not.
if he can become the face of wire fraud, I bet
They're
you
going
the
to do it.
government would be like, yeah, we'll lock him up. We'll lock you up too.
That's right. That's exactly right. Anyway, let's send one up to the man himself, Nolan Ryan, to make sure this never happens,
Yeah.
nor will it ever happen again.
But
Thank you very
I
much.
will say this is the last thing I have to say about this, is that I might be naive to think that, I don't think he was involved. I think he was robbed, right? That
Yeah.
I think Shohei Ohtani is innocent, and I might be naive to that, but he has never given me a reason not to believe him so
Yeah.
far. And so I believe everything that he said until he gives
Yeah.
me a reason not to. And then shame on me if he's been lying this whole time.
Fool me once, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I have some friends that have said where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a whole lot of smoke here, and they're not wrong. So it'll be interesting. I think though, my final say is I'm right there with you. Like I don't feel that he's guilty at all, but we don't have all the information yet,
but
and we may
there's the
never.
thing is there's all that smoke could just be surrounding Mizuhara, who has said, "It's my fault. I messed up," because initially he was the one who said, "Oh, Otani Shohei gave me the money." Because
Yeah,
that's what he told the bookie, so he had to stick with that story. So that's what he said in the
sure.
interview. And then he probably
Yeah.
realized, like, oh, I can't get him in trouble. I got to own this. And then he changed his story. And there's
Or
people
was
who
he
are
muscled
saying
into owning it?
there's a lot of people saying that he's the fall guy
See,
in this whole thing. That he made more
yeah, he's
money
the
in one
patsy.
day than what he would have made the rest of his life.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it though.